He was talking to Everest when their connection was suddenly severed, an action that took him by surprise, as he full knew he would never do such thing, nor would she. First assuming she reappear on the cameras, that a few still worked. He watched the monitors closely only to be met with nothing. Unable to suppress his worries, Dwayne abandoned his position to run to find his friend. Ignoring the frigid winds chilling to his bones, the Dane fled the security room and emerged in what could only be described as a cavern, made entirely of ice. The water pressure mixing with the winter had transformed the ski lounge into a frozen palace, which would have been a wondrous sight he wasn't walking in the shadow of death with every step. His limbs he was feeling more stiff than usual, and his breathing was become notoriously difficult motion. The blizzard smiled an icy grin as it watched him run, further down drowning the freezing dog into his grasp. Running entirely on adrenaline, Dwayne followed Everest's path until he reached her where she fell, having fainted over the sight of Jake's corpse. He found her slouched on her side, lying motionless on the metal floor. Her fur was frosted with shiny particles, fallen to the ground as if she had simply fallen asleep. Fearing the worst, Dwayne grabbed the fainted husky in his teeth and hastily pulled her deeper into the safe room, taking refuge in another room with a sealable door. The sight of Everest slumped unconscious made his breath catch in his throat, his heart pounding into his nerves. He was scared to move her any further, horrified at the thought of touching her any more would break their already frail frame. All he could do was sit before her, petrified in the dark room, as anguish ravaged his mind. There were dwell in the dark silence nothing but fearful whimpers of the Great Dane in the air. At least they were safe. The only grazing thought in Dwayne's mind to keep him sane. The creature outside didn't get through the door, and there were no open ceiling vents in the room that it could use to ambush them. That didn't stop the constant darting of gazes. Dwayne shakily, looking at every corner of the room, was a pit in his stomach. He had witnessed upon hearing entering Jake's room Jake's remains. It's the scene that gutted him to the very soul, carving vile image in his mind he'd never forget again. Jake was indeed in the safe room, as Everest all correctly guessed. He was right there in the center, waiting for her, in dozens of pieces. Beneath an open ceiling vent, a gaping entryway for the Mentagara's travel, lay the massacred gore that were once a human owner. He had been jumped from above and swiftly dispatched, a phone dropping in his hand and breaking the ground. Perhaps he tried to call for help, reading anyone who could possibly hear him, only to buckle under the blizzard smothering of its signals. He would have likely only had seconds to react, to distraction for the concerns of his lost husky. Everest, meanwhile, was dreaming. Her mind had longed for an escape since the Mentagara slew hubcap, pleading over and over again for it to be just a horrible nightmare. In a catatonic state, her subconsciousness was gathered what could be fled into a sunny world where the winter was burned away. She opened her eyes to a bright green field, twinkling with the flowers, the sun pleasantly blanketing her where the cold had snapped its jaws. Even with her fur layered, the warmth was almost perfectly comfortable, healing away her frozen burns. Her brain wiped away at the memory of her owner, instead recreating Jack smiling, embracing his arms, running towards her. The Paw Patrol was with him, happily running behind him, eager to reunite with the rescued husky. Sky was in the lead, completely outrunning Chase, and diving into Everest's long, loving hold. They'd never be separated again. She danced in her dreams sometime until slowly all began to darken. The husky watched in confusion as Sky and Jake were pulled from her arms. The faint feeling of being cold poked her tail. Gradually it began to leach up her body, spreading a frozen discomfort as the sun was blackened in the sky. Her dreams, her only escape from the horrid nightmare, was over. She jolted awake in the dark room, flailing out her weary limbs. "Ah!" she cried out, dozens of terrifying memories all forcing back to her mind, once until she screamed into the darkness. "Jake!" Dwayne jumped at her awakening, still increasingly tense. Once he realized that it was not the creature having spontaneously appeared in the room, his face spread with joy. "Everest, you're alive!" "Alive? What?" She scolded around and friends with emotions. Where am I? Where's Jake? Jake, Dwayne said, hesitantly, and he didn't watch her. Didn't you see it? No! The husky faced him with a distraught expression. I saw nothing. He's here. I know he's here. Just a vision. She repeated in her head. It was all just a vision. A horrible trick of the mind. She trembled with the chaotic thoughts, screaming at her only remaining friend at the lounge. Dane frowned, taking a step towards her. Everest, what are you talking about? I saw it too. You didn't see anything, she shouted, all of her strength crumbling at her paws. It was a trick. He's not. She held out an accusing paw at him, opening her muzzle to scream anything she could muster, but not a single sound left her. Dwayne watched her hold the pose for a few seconds. Everest. The husky stood, almost appearing as if she were about to attack him. Slowly her anger melted. Her lifted paw began to tremble. Her composure shattered into pieces, grief encompassing any scrap of rage she could have possibly lashed with, but there was nothing left of her now. What was a dog without her owner? She had never known the meaning of being astray. Dozens of times she had felt sympathy for the unfortunate they passed by on the streets. Collapsing to the floor, she couldn't even manage to find a single word to express the hollowness that tore into her heart. She buried her face into her paws, cloaking back sobs that one horrible image flashed in her mind. Jake was long dead, slaughtered in what assumed was safety, with not even last word to etch its throat. There was no telling how long he'd been there, for all she knew. He could have been one of the very first to die. Minutes stretched into eternity as Everest's tears slowed to a halt, leaving the drain of any motivation to keep going. She lifted her head, meeting Dwayne's compassionate gaze, with eyes red-rimmed and swollen. What? She choked out. What am I supposed to do now? Dwayne was torn at the raw agony of her voice. He held his place for a few seconds, unable to find any direction of what to do, surrounding to the only thing he could think of. He gently moved forward, wrapping his arms around Everest in a warm embrace. He held her close, offering what little support he could possibly give to the defeated dog. Her sorrow was inconsolable, but in Dwayne's arms, a fleeting sense of comfort touched her frozen heart. We're still alive, he whispered, holding her close. We could still get out of here. Think of everything you faced in the past. He couldn't visibly see if his words have any effect, only able to see Everest's twitching ear and unmoving tail. Even when things were really, really bad, you always find a way out. He sighed into her fur. I think it's time we get out of there for good. Gently breaking their embrace, Dwayne leaned back a little on his hind paws. He unzipped his biker jacket and draped it around Everest's trembling body. Everest's eyes widened at the gesture, staring into his gaze. Dwayne, you'll freeze. He waved off her words with a tensed paw. I'll manage. It kind of looks better on you that way. He chuckled as he zipped her up, watching his partner look down at her new outfit. To be honest, I was never much of a biker anyway. Motorcycles are too loud. Dwayne! No, keep it. He leaned closer to her, gently gripping her shoulders with a reassuring smile. Despite the icy chill that still lingered in the air, their hearts flickered with warmth as their eyes met, as a cascade of dark thoughts briefly unable to reach them. Even with his loving expression, Everest visibly still deflated, frowning at the floor, knowing she had lost Jake, had been so many things to her. An owner, a friend, even a father on some occasions. Never would she be ready to lose it all in one night. Nothing but old memories to preserve the feelings they shared together. Her expressions hardened, body tensing up slightly against the cold. Her eyes searched the ground, processing the information in her mind. He wouldn't have wanted this. She looked up at her companion. Jake would have wanted me to die in some hunting ground. Furrowing her brows, she gave Dwayne a narrow stare. He would have told me to get out, and he would have wanted me to live, maybe even distract the creature so I could run away. Dwayne nodded, giving her a reassuring, although shivering smile. Holding her arms, meeting Dwayne in her own embrace, the interlocking them together. She flattened her ears in cold determination. We are getting the hell out of here. Agreed. Do we have anything we could drive out? The Dane asked. It took the husky a few minutes, thinking over an answer before she gave him a nod. My kennel. Your kennel. It can turn into a snowcat, she said, breaking their hold onto each other. It was a gift from the Paw Patrol. It's essentially a tracked vehicle that can drive on the snow, and it drives real fast. It's our way out. Great, where is it? Everest blinked, turning away to ponder her plan of action. It's outside, somewhere in front of the lounge, probably buried in the snow by now. We'll have to dig it out. Walking to the edge of the fortified room, she eyed up at the steel door, meaning we have to go back out there. The creature is still very likely hovering around the lounge, skittering along every wall and ceiling until it laid eyes on the lost puppy. If we could get to the front door and go outside, dig out my kennel, I could transform it and we can ride it out. But if that creature gets even a glimpse of us, she hesitated, a twinge of fear in her voice, then we're dead. The exposed Dwayne walked to her side. We'll have to move quickly. I don't expect the cameras are an option anymore. And I'm not sending you back down there. She took a moment to gather her bearings. This will have to be an absolute perfect. A single mistake will doom us. A shaking breath left her, wondering if she was going to lie to herself. I have no idea if I could pull this off, but by God, I am going to try. With Dwayne at her side, she unlocked the door that tightly protected them from the outer ambulance. Pushing it open with her nose, Everest instantly froze in shock at the room before her. It was the main area of the safe room, still with bloodied piece of Jake's remains. Her traumatized eyes feverishly scanned each arm, leg, and piece of flesh that scattered about the red floor. He didn't stand a chance against the Mentagara. His whole body was slaughtered into meat like a pig at a butcher. Shreds of their clothes, either idly soaked in blood or acted as nets to keep the pieces from collapsing to piles of human gore. Visibly cringing at the sight, Dwayne looked towards his paralyzed friend. Everest? She didn't respond for a few seconds, still standing in the horror at the gruesome sight before her. Then slowly she turned her head to him, her face slavered in agony. Give me a trash bag. They moved as a grief-soaked pair, Dwayne keeping his ears pricked while Everest dragged through a large trash bag, heavy and leaving a trail of red behind it. Trekking down the hallways, climbing over the collapsed debris, they emerged in the north hallway where two rooms branched at their sides. Everest beckoned Dwayne inside one of them, taking the bag with her as they entered what was once a locker room meant for patrons. The Mentagara had undoubtedly infiltrated this particular area a long time ago, as its windows were shattered outwards for the blizzard to gratefully pile inside. However, there was no open vents in there, and the door was firmly closed behind them. It wasn't secure by any means, but the Mentagara had no way of sneaking in unless it either broke in or came from outside. Breaking in would alert both dogs, leaving them to flee outside. Going outside would paint the invisible creature in frost, allowing Everest to perfectly spot it stalkingly nearby. The two were safe at least, safe enough that they could do what needed to be done. Thinking of nothing of the danger, Everest walked to an open window, uttering for Dwayne to come over. Together they lifted the bag and heaved it through the window sill, hearing it plop onto the snow outside. What are we doing? Dwayne asked. Everest held up a paw. Wait here. Taking a sharp breath, she jumped up and climbed through the window, landing outside. She was immediately assaulted by the full power of the blizzard. She was protected by the walls of the lounge. The husky had left her safely, crossing into the winter's blistering realm, with violent wind and snow to greet her. She looked around for a moment, trying to squint through the blinding white for any possible thing that could have been waiting for her. Whatever she had fought with a huff, she was made for this weather from the beginning. Though winter was her home, no matter what morbid face it wore. Scoffing at the winds, she took the bloody trash bag in her teeth and pulled it further out, leaving a trail in the snow. Coming to a small hill of white, she dropped the bag and walked a few feet away, leaning down to dig, excavating the ground as always a dog's specialty. There wasn't a single breed out there who didn't love to dig a good hole. Putting her front paws to work, she dug out clumps of snow and kicked them back behind her, soon forming a deep pit in the snow. The cold bit at her with every scoop she made, but she ignored it, even easier with Dwayne's jacket warming her tandem. Her blank mind was with fog, as she wordlessly jumped out and returned to the trash bag. Already crystallizing from the frost with a heavy heart, she pulled it over to a pit and pushed it in. She could only gather so much of Jake. Several pieces or clumps, or more accurately, were left behind. Anyone potentially stumbling upon a scene like that would conclude that some poor soul had been torn to shreds. Only recognizable bits they collected, and Everest didn't really want to touch the raw gore strewn about. Grief attacked once more as she began covering the pit, her quivering breaths becoming out as misty puffs. Tears welled in her eyes as she covered the trash bag in snow, slightly blurring her vision as she worked. Once the trash bag was firmly covered, the pit vanished before her, once again appearing to be nothing more than a massive sheet of snow spanning her for miles. But here, this particular spot, things were different. This is where Everest buried him, letting go of everything she had clung to her life. She sat down before the blank ground, hanging her head with the silent utters and love and gratitude for everything they had shared. Truly, she had been blessed to have such a beautiful thing, and even now it all lay to rest. The beloved memories of her owner would forever be etched in her heart. The husky stood up in the snow, taking one last look at the burial site. Bringing the paw to her neck, she unclipped her collar, still bearing the emblem she always worn since day one. Single white tree, behind a blue sky, the very symbol that carried her name. Dropping the accessory into the snow, and she pushed it down with her paw, burying it on top of her owner. Her tears falling into ice and snow, she turned and walked away. "Bye, Jake." Dwayne was still waiting in the locker room when Everest jumped back through the window, landing on the floor and approaching him. "It's done," she simply said, her voice choking with emotion. The Dane nodded in understanding. "My kennel is just outside, but when I start the show cat, it's going to be loud. Loud enough that it will lure that thing right at us." "You can't start it fast enough?" Dwayne said, with a tilt of his head. "Started then at the floor gas pedal?" "Well, sure, but it needs a few seconds to actually transform. 6 or 7 seconds. And then starting it will take more time in itself. This could be the last thing we ever do." Then, Dwayne looked aside for a moment. "We need a distraction." "That's what I was thinking. But I can't think of anything in this damn place that still works after all that happened," Everest said in exasperation, still looking up at the frozen camera that hung on the wall. "The camera systems are no doubt completely shot, and there is not a scrap of electric power left in the lounge." "Well, not everything is worthless. You could always, What?" Everett brisked. Dwayne shrugged. "Make something." Raising an eyebrow, Everest gave him an odd look. "Make, like build our own distraction?" "Why not? I learned plenty of things while working on those bikes and towers." Dwayne nodded, already looking around the room for things. "We wouldn't even need to build something, just anything that could be loud enough to draw it near." "Okay, but what?" Everest flattened her ears, starting to become agitated. "I already said nothing works here anymore. What are we supposed to make with a shitload of ice and ski equipment?" Her partner looked at his composure. "We don't need to make anything. Look." He held up his paw, pointing at something behind her. Still skeptical, Everest turned her head, looking where he was gesturing. Her eyes fell on the wall behind her, coated with ice and waterlogged plaster. She didn't understand at first, scanning the surface that she had seen hundreds of times in her life, until her gaze rested on one red object quietly lingering in the corner. A fire extinguisher. "Those things are pretty explosive from what I can recall," the Dane said, walked beside her, eyeing up at the emergency tool. "I don't think it would be pretty hard enough to rig." Egg one, narrowing his eyes at the device. His mind took a work for what he need. "I just need something to spark it. Then, well, kaboom." Everest hadn't said anything until scanning the extinguisher before her. The gesture in her head mind, she met his gaze. "What would actually work?" she said, incredulous at the reveal. "How would you spark it?" I'll think of something." Dwayne jumped up, running to the hinge pressured on container from the wall. "I remembered something Hubcap said about that. I know it will work. I just need to find 2 things." "Huh?" was all Everest could utter. "You're a fucking genius." "Thank you." The Dane gave her a sweet smile, wagging his tail while he worked. The plan starting to piece together in her mind. An hour of drive surging through her. Both dogs felt the escape on the horizon. If you could rig that thing to blow, we could set it off in one of the farther rooms, Everest said, rushing to help him. Digging out my kennel won't be loud at all, so we can wait until then. Everything clicked all at once, her eyes widening. I dig out my kennel, you sound the explosion. I start the car, and then we're out. Elation flooding through her, a grin peeled across her face, lighting up the husky in resolve. All right, let's do it.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.